Hi guys, what's going on, and welcome to Total War 3 Kingdoms. So I've been pretty excited to try this game out, and whilst previously I've done videos where I've had quite a few reservations about the game, so far I've really not been disappointed. I've actually been really quite impressed with the game. Feels like a really solid, fairly polished product, and I think probably their decision to delay the release a few months back in March has really paid off. So for those of you who don't know, this is the first Total War game set in China, and it revolves around the collapse of the Han Dynasty and the devolution of China into the Three Kingdoms period. So the game can either be played in Romance or Records mode, with the main difference really being the power of the heroes. But personally, I feel like the game was mostly developed towards the Romance mode, where you've got the hero equipment, the hero abilities, the hero powers. So that's really where I've put most of my time, even though I find the Records mode is probably a little bit more historical. So what are my favourite parts so far? I just absolutely goddamn love the UI interface. It's so smooth and clean and neat that I just love it. I just feel it works really well. It can perhaps feel a little bit daunting at first with quite a large number of options available. But things like the reforms tree is neat, clear, beautifully presented. I love the way you can trace the branches up and across the tree. I think that's really well done. And I also find the information on my characters, cities, missions, the diplomatic status of other states is all close at hand, easy to use and well optimised. Which kind of, as a bit of a side anecdote, I recently reviewed the game Imperator Rome, a game which I kind of enjoyed, but the UI in that game felt so counterintuitive, really lacklustre and fairly poorly presented, and that really went a long way to reducing my enjoyment of that game. So I'm really pleased that Three Kingdoms seems to have really pinned the UI down quite well in this, and I think it's one of the main pluses of this game. So I briefly touched earlier on the Romance and Records mode, with the difference mostly revolving around the strength and kind of the overall importance of the heroes in the game. Well, one factor is in Romance mode you also get the option to sort of further customise your heroes. This kind of ranges from sort of giving them different equipment, weapons, armour, horses, all of which kind of affect their sort of statistics and attributes, and all of which can sometimes as well be scavenged from your defeated enemies on the battlefield. So when you kill enemies with good equipment, you can often steal that equipment and issue it to your own heroes. The heroes also unlock abilities as they level up. It can be pretty useful. Both some of them are sort of in-battle abilities, which give them things like hamstring, which can slow enemy units down or enemy heroes down, and some of the abilities are more focused on sort of the strategic map, affecting them as a governor, or also affecting how they behave in your court, things like that. So what about the battles themselves? Well, right from the off, they are hugely graphically impressive. Not something that I'm surprised about. Creative Assembly always does well on this, but they just are awesomely detailed, particularly the maps as well. You know, in siege battles, the cities just feel absolutely huge and very, very expansive. Really quite cool and pretty epic. Although now is probably a good time to point out that unfortunately work has taken me away from home for about a week, so I'm having to play and record this all on my laptop, which is why I'm not on max graphical settings, and you may notice still a little bit of stutter in some other video footage. And it's also why I'm not playing on the extreme unit size. You'll notice my units here are 80 men, when they can actually be taken up to 240 men unit sizes. This is a really awesome change, and I think it's a change that's hopefully been driven by community feedback, something people have been really wanting to see occur into these sort of really much bigger unit sizes. And it's something we've not seen in the Total War game for an awfully long time. So it can certainly make the battlefield a lot more larger, a lot more expansive, and a lot more epic. Certainly a change I'd welcome. One of the things, or the aspects that I've previously criticised from some of the gameplay footage that Creative Assembly put out earlier in the year was the AI behaviour and kind of the general intelligence of the computer. And from my experience so far, this is kind of still a little bit of a mixed bag with some good and sort of some bad. On the campaign map, I generally find them to be pretty good, with the computer sort of actively working to support their allies in times of need. So when an allied city is under attack, they'll send their armies to go and support that, and they're pretty good at effectively positioning their armies, recruiting decent compositions of armies, and generally just doing a pretty good job of trying to oppose my expansion, something I feel they do quite effectively, and actually makes the game relatively difficult even for someone who's played Total War before. I think that's a good thing. Although I do find one area that a little bit let down is kind of the diplomacy, where I find it fairly easy to game that and to force pieces when I want to for relatively little money. even against people who are about to take some of my cities. So I think diplomacy is something we might need a little bit of work. But the main area I feel that sometimes the AI lets itself down is in the battles, where sometimes I've found enemy heroes just randomly charge headlong into my lines without any supporting troops, despite the fact they have a large army behind them. They just seem to randomly charge and get themselves killed without really doing much, whereas if they moved up the troops, obviously it'd be a lot more effective. I've also found that sometimes when the enemy is getting a reinforcing army, and the army that they're initially starting with is much smaller than my army, then the natural thing for them to do is to fall back into regroup with their reinforcing army. Sometimes they do this, but then other times they don't, which kind of seems a bit of a pointless thing, because obviously they'll be able to fight far more effectively as one strong army than as two sort of small armies. Something, again, just needs a little bit more work, I think, on the AI. I've also found kind of deployments on sieges to be a bit random. You have the ability to tunnel under the enemy's walls and set fires and knock them down in the siege phase. It takes a couple of turns to do in the campaign map, but then that just seems to randomly put a hole in the wall at a random point in the enemy city, which doesn't necessarily correlate to where your army deploys, which kind of seems a bit silly, having to move your army around different sides of the walls. Obviously you're going to go through the hole in the wall. Why doesn't it just deploy your army next to the hole? Small point, I know, just something I found that slightly annoyed me. Once you're actually into the battles, you'll then get the option to try and duel enemy heroes. This is basically a fight to the death in which two heroes can fight it out without being interrupted. You don't have to accept duel offers from enemy heroes, and enemy heroes won't necessarily accept duel offers from you. Depends on whether they think they've got a good chance of beating you, the size of the armies, etc. Lots of factors come into play. And although you do actually have the option to run away or sort of interrupt these duels, there are pretty big penalties if you do so. Generally it's not worth doing. But the one perhaps slightly unintended consequence I've found, which is slightly aggravating from the fact of duels, is the fact that they create this sort of invisible bubble around the two duelists in which no one can enter. I guess the troops are trying to not interrupt. But when two people end up having the duel in the middle of quite a narrow street in a city battle, it means there's basically an invisible block in the middle of the street, which means no one can easily get round. It kind of blocks the whole thing up, which is slightly annoying. So I kind of wanted to keep this review pretty short, and hopefully, fingers crossed, I've covered all the main points I wanted to in this video. And I guess I just wanted to summarise, overall, is this game worth getting? Well, yes, I'd say it is. I'd say it's really one of the more polished Total War games we've seen in recent years. I think their decision to delay it by that few months from March through to this May release was absolutely the right decision, because I think they've really optimised and improved the game a lot since then. It's got a real excellent range of factions, plenty of replayability, and I'm really not all that surprised that it's currently set at 87% positive on Steam from 4,500 reviews, so it seems to be getting really well received by the player base so far. And personally, I'm myself looking forward to playing it much more going forwards, so I think that's a really good sign that it's a pretty good game, and I think it's got a lot of potential going forwards as well. I'm probably going to end up doing a Let's Play series on this, just can't quite decide which faction I want to end up playing as next. I've been playing obviously as Tao Tao for the starting one. I don't know which one I want to do for my Let's Play. Anyway, hopefully you have enjoyed this sort of short little review. I'm kind of really interested to hear what you guys think about the game, so do let me know in the comments down below. I'll be sure to get back to you. Subscribe to the channel for lots more Total War content, and thanks for watching. I shall see you all on the next video.